Welcome, lesser mega-bosses, to the simple yet somehow confusing attack plans of the Mortal Realms, because today we are talking about Gordrakk, the Fist of Gork, exploring him as a character and what he is really up to now in the Mortal Realms story, because, spoiler alert, his plan to break the city of Excelsius has failed, but he has himself a new calling. Now, one thing I'd like to add right up top, if you like this video and you're interested in this character, please consider using the affiliate link in the description down below. Noble Knight Games is a great store in the Midwest with discounts on all Games Workshop products. They can ship it directly to you and do so very quickly, and using that link goes a long way to supporting me, my wife, and this channel. Now, for those of you who are new to Age of Sigmar, or this character in particular, Gordrakk, the Fist of Gork, is the mega boss of mega bosses, an Iron Jaws orc beyond challenge, and for the longest time, he really was the premier destruction character. There wasn't really a whole lot of named characters outside of him throughout the entire Grand Alliance destruction, and his story was that he wanted to unite all of the orcs and gits into one big war. A military campaign that would scour the realms and tear down everything that the other Grand Alliances of Order, Death, and Chaos had built. From Sanctuary to Dreadfort to cities to the necropolis of Shyish. Now, of course, in Gordrakk's mind, one of the best places to start was right at home in his backyard in the realm of Gur, where the spirits of beasts reigned supreme and the tenuous control that other factions had was weak at best, because the realm is so hard to basically build in. They're already kind of like a house of cards, so it's like, yeah, let's just start here. Specifically, he wanted to destroy the city of Excelsius, the city of secrets, which is the kind of like the main mega city in Gur for the forces of order. There's a lot of people there. It's quite large. It's on a coastal thing. It's all surrounding this huge artifact from the old world, which I'm not going to talk about too much. But for quite a while, that's kind of where his story ended. We knew that Gordrakk was headed towards Excelsius, and that's really about it. Then the Broken Realms series came, and he finally made it. Now, I did an entire breakdown of the series. The vids that you would want to watch regarding Broken Realms, and at least Gordrakk's part of it, would be the videos concerning Broken Realms Kragnos, the last book in that series. But to briefly summarize, Gordrakk broke into a storm vault and he got the ram-horned skull of an ancient god beast. His Grot shamans told him that to succeed in destroying the city of Excelsius, he needed two more items in addition to this giant ram. One was known as the Basha Shard, a weapon that could pierce dang near anything, and the second was an amulet that would render him nearly invulnerable. So Gordrakk's doing great. He has all these, shaman and people foreseeing the future, telling him what he needs. He's feeling good. He's got the skull of a god beast and he mounts it to a huge battering ram. Feeling good. He's making his way towards Excelsius. And then they go to get the weapon, the Basha Shard. And the defenders of this storm vault, which we learn are Stormcasts and Fire Slayers and a few other auxiliary things, rather than letting the forces of destruction have all the artifacts in it, once it became clear that they were losing the Storm Vault, they just self-detonated the entire thing and it imploded. Now at this point, there's a huge problem. The artifact, the Basha Shard, is there. It's just underground, but they would have to do weeks and weeks of excavation and digging to be able to get it. And if there's probably one thing that defines all Grand Alliance destruction pretty well, is that they are generally quite impatient. And so Gordrakk decides, forget, the prophecy and all these kinds of things, the instructions and the advice of my shamans. We don't need these other things. We got a big old ram. We're going to go smash down the gates of Excelsius and it's going to be great. So he leaves without ever having gotten those two remaining artifacts. Soon after, he meets Kragnos and the two strike out towards Excelsius. They're not friends at all, but it's very much an alliance of convenience. At Excelsius, he takes his huge waw that he has and he rams the gate with this god beast skull, which explodes as it hits the magic of Lord Croak himself, who put up a little barrier. Gordrakk is tossed like onto the walls of the city. Like this explosion was like a nuclear bomb, just, and everyone just kind of flew away. He ends up on the wall of Excelsior. He's just hacking out, defenders left and right until the fight just kind of grinds down and it becomes very clear it's just not winnable at this moment. So he gets out of dodge. And that's the last we really saw of him in the Broken Realms series. And so the question I had at the end of it is like, well, where does that leave Gordrakk? Because now he has failed an invasion of Excelsius. There is now a deity level character within the Forces of Destruction, Kragnos himself. So where does that leave Gordrakk? I was kind of concerned that he had lost some of his, say, pizzazz. Well, there's a small story in the timeline of the newest Warclans Battletome, thank you Games Workshop for sending this over, that I'd like to read to you now, and it's simply called Return to Fangathrak. A flash of inspiration sets Gordrakk on the path to redemption. He seeks out Fangathrak once more. Finding the worm-like god beast proves easy enough. It has left a mounded trail several hundred meters wide across southern Bjarl. With his Maw Crusher, Big Teeth, pounding the earth in a rhythmic beat to attract the creature, Gordrakk summons the god beast by using himself as bait. He feels it approaching in the ground and kicks Big Teeth into a loping run. Every time Big Teeth tries to take wing, Gordrakk smacks it back down to earth in a headlong charge, ensuring the pounding rhythm of his fists keep Fangathrak thundering after them. Only when they reach the chasms of Gorentia does Gordrakk let his steed slow. The ground churns, and then, as the megaboss spurs his steed into one final leap into the crawling pits, it explodes. Out comes the god beast from the rocky crust of Gur, its vast maw yawning open to devour the megaboss and steed alike. Yet, it had reckoned without the chasm's own hunger. As Gordrakk and Big Teeth land in the nets of Arachnarok webbing, Fangathrak becomes hopelessly wedged within the chasm, the immense fissure groaning and cracking as its granite fangs close on fresh prey. Fangathrak is wedged fast, bound by webs stronger than steel cable and poisoned into a stupor by the venom of a score of Arachnaroks. At Gordrakk's command, its jaws are bound open and the realm gate within gaping wide, and the story of his conquest of a god beast begins to spread. Soon enough, he leads his hordes once more in the name of Gorka Morka, though not to Azir, but the 8 points, and a showdown with Archaon himself. So I'm just going to throw in a quick few lore bits for those who didn't know. During the original time where we met the Ironjaws, when they had their own book, way back in the Realmgate Wars, we were introduced to Fangathrak. It is essentially an all-gate, a massive, again, hundreds of meters wide realm gate that leads directly to the 8 points, and vice versa. The thing is, nobody could conquer the dang thing because it's stuck inside the mouth of a god beast. It tried to eat it, and it just got lodged there. The way that Archaon had controlled it when the Age of Sigmar setting began was that he essentially had a whole bunch of forts that were chained to its face, and these forts kept it in place. And essentially what Gordrakk did was like, I want that gate, I want to go into the 8 points, that'd be a fun fight, and so he just basically acts as bait and leads this thing into a giant canyon, if you will, or crevasse, or however you want to say it. But here's the thing, in Gur, the natural features of the environment are also alive. Mountains eat dirt, oceans devour sand, and so when this thing, inadvertently falls into this canyon, this gap, the sides of it close because it's a mouth and it's going to devour this huge beast that just got wedged inside of it. Now that process of eating it is probably going to take a very, very long time, more than enough time that Gordrakk needs to wedge open its mouth, and boom, he has the only all-gate leading to Gur. It is huge, he completely owns it, and not only that, but this aura of how great he is begins to erupt again, because he had a defeat, he's kind of feeling down, his mythos that he had built up, the air is kind of going out of the balloon a little bit, but with this action he redirects the narrative and he's back in control, he has a plan, and he's done a thing that no other orc could. So as I end all my videos, I want to talk about why I think this is so cool. I love when we know characters have a direction that they don't necessarily have to reach, but it's cool if they do. So just knowing, Gordrakk's headed to Excelsius, that was a fun little tidbit for me to kind of like sink my teeth into, and what if scenarios and that kind of stuff. And then Broken Realms Kragnos happened and we got to see it happen. Same thing here where it's like, I'm content to just kind of daydream about what Gordrakk versus Archaon is going to look like. I'm very excited about it. But I like the fact that Gordrakk has some direction, and that, he might show up in other stories here and there, but I believe it would be for the purposes of bringing other war clans under his rule so he could have the biggest, baddest wall that marches into the 8 points. And I think this highlights really well something we talk about when we're discussing leaders in Auric war clans, right? It's not just that they're the biggest, it's that mega bosses have to keep the inertia moving, right? You get a whole bunch of crazy people who love to fight. You have to keep moving them towards the next challenge, the next thing to butt up against, because if you don't, people start to fall apart, right? They turn on each other when they're bored. You just, again, have to control the narrative about being, I'm the bestest, I bring us to the best fights, I get us the best loot, whatever your warband likes. Leaders have to be constantly pushing forward. And this is Gordrakk doing that in a way that only he could. Only he is brazen enough to take the biggest of his Maw Crush amounts and use himself as bait to capture a god beast. Having him go to the 8 points is the best. And honestly, I want a destruction-themed Warcry release. When they put out those little one-off games, or maybe it's around for a couple months. I want one where it's just and then Gordrakk comes in and wrecks everybody else's day, right? GW, if you don't call it Wrath of the Gorka Chosen, you're fools. That would be an incredible, fascinating campaign book to read. If you don't know, I've shared it before, Wrath of the Everchosen, which was when the forces of death invaded the 8 points. It is my favorite campaign book that I have ever read from Games Workshop, bar none. And so something like that, but for the forces of destruction, I think would be so freaking cool. I would just lose my mind. Things I want to come from this as I kind of daydream about, Wrath of the Gorka Chosen. I want a Varanite axe for Gordrakk, just because that sounds like a cool meeting of chaos and destruction. I want the 8 points no longer to be, solely held by the forces of chaos, but I want to see the forces of destruction and death from Wrath of the Everchosen really turn it into a free-for-all. I want the 8 points to be this is just a scrap, right? And there's no winning, it's no man's land, but everybody has to keep throwing troops into it because it's so important. Heck, even open up the gate to Azir there and just have forces of order be nope, we are entering the fray, and you can have a perpetual zone of madness where every faction is just throwing troops. Everything is bad, but there's all different kinds of flavors of it. And I love that, right? I think, honestly, that's what was missing from the launch of Warcry. If you don't know, Warcry is set in the 8 points itself, and it was generally all chaos themed. But now that more and more combatants are entering the 8 points in force and controlling gates and kind of carving out, I should say, pieces of it for themselves, I want to see more variety there. And so my final thoughts really is just, I like that Gordrakk is back. He did a cool thing that is impossible for others to do, and he did so in a way that is going to lead him towards his next big conquest, which again, I'm so excited that he's going to the 8 points. But I would love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. And if you could, please take a moment to just like this video. It goes a long way to helping me and the channel grow, and it costs you nothing. So thank you all so much for watching and listening, and I hope to catch you in my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Happy wargaming.